Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with our friend and intuitive healer and holistic life coach, Tracy Makarenko. If you haven't met her yet, well, you're in store for a big treat today. We're going to be focusing on, her book, one of her books. But by the way, there's a lot more to her. The work she does as an intuitive, she's a teacher of the levels of Usui, Karuna Reiki. She has two books, I believe, right? And also, she's working with people via Zoom anywhere around the world and really helping guide people intuitively. I just said it briefly. How are you, Tracy?
I'm good, Jill. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And by the way, amazing mother, and she's a wife. There's a lot to you. How would you describe yourself?
Um, Geez. I mean, that's what I'm supposed to be doing today with this book, and it always just catches me off guard. But uh,
Yes.
yeah, no, I mean, I love my life. I've worked really hard to get to this place.
Mm-hmm.
Life hasn't always been as perfect as it is now, or as close to perfect as we would like to say. But no, I have really healthy, super great relationships with my husband and my two daughters and my son-in-law. I have great friends and a support system, extended family. Yeah, life is, just really good. And then you get all the extra bonus when you get to work with people and help them heal intuitively. Um, which is what I do, but it's bigger than that. I offer cranial sacral therapy and visceral manipulation. Of course, Reiki's always in there running all the time when I'm doing my other work. I work on the brain. I'm a certified holistic life coach. I include shamanic healings in my healing modality when I'm working on people. So things like past lives, inner child, uh, wounds of different sorts come up having to do with traumas from that shamanic part. And yeah, there's just like a lot of different things that I've been doing to help others for the last 20 plus years. um, and I do talk a little bit about that in my book, but mostly my book Moving from the Outside In, which I'd like to talk about today, is about those earlier years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people probably would like to be able to find me. It's an important part.
Tell us
So
how we do that.
you can find me on my website at tracymakarenko.com, TracyMakarenko, and it's the same across all social media, um, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah.
All the above. All right. Well, tell us the title of the book we know. When did you write it? Why did you write it? What it's about? We're going to dive into all of that today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. So the title of the book that I wrote back in, or published back in 2013, is called Moving from the Outside In. So just been 10 years since I wrote that book. It's still super relevant, just because we all are living our lives and we're all going through stuff. This story isn't about me finding myself, uh, close to 40 and moving into this healing work. This book starts when I'm in my early 20s and I need to make a change because I've been in this super dysfunctional relationship for 6 years. And it doesn't matter what I do, I can't get away from this guy. He's just always there and he's always causing drama and trauma. So I decide to quit school and move back home. And that was kind of my first real step into my own life. Up until
Hmm.
that point, I think I'd always done everything for everyone else. So, there's some point in everyone's life where we finally make that first decision to change things.
Hmm. So true.
Yeah.
And that was it?
Well, that was the first step. And then all of a sudden, when that awareness hits you, you realize other things are going on. You know, there was more to life than just taking care of everybody. You start learning the boundaries around relationships and what relationships feel healthy and what relationships are unhealthy. In my early 20s, I started manifesting without even knowing anything about that because this was the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about manifesting. I didn't know anything about boundaries. I didn't know anything about anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have words for that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of one of those things. You're wandering along and it's like, I don't want to hang out with them anymore. And then you feel bad about it. And then you realize you don't have to feel bad. You're allowed to make these choices for yourself. So the book is actually the title, Moving from the Outside In, came about for a couple different reasons. I actually had called the book What's Next because at the time I felt like I was always asking that question. Oh my God, what's next? I can't believe what just happened. Oh my God, what's next? But I ended up going to a few different writers' workshops and I had met Tracy. He's CEO of Hay House and the division called Balboa and chatted with him a little bit. And he was really helpful on a lot of different levels. And so just before I published my book, I actually went into a guided meditation with him. So chatted to him on the other side. Um, and he told me, your book should be called Moving from the Outside In. And it just really hit somewhere because that's exactly what the book was about. It was about my life as it had been full and busy and always reaching out to people to fill my space, um, to that transformation in my 30s where all of a sudden I turned inwards and I started, doing meditation and yoga and finding that silence within inside myself that actually had a voice, um, and that inner peace. So moving from the outside in is all about that.
And where can we get a copy from it? Amazon, we can get a copy from. Also, your website, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can find that.
TracyMakarenko.com. And wow. So this is all about healing, and there's really a lot of truth in this. Was there anything in particular that was really hard to put into that book?
I don't know who I was when I actually wrote the book because there's a lot of difficult truths. Like even rereading some of it for me now is is
Wow.
difficult. Um, and they say when you write a book, you heal through it for sure. But even now, there's pieces of it that I still find difficult to read. Um, not as much as they used to be because I think you're always healing. But my husband, like we were married for probably 10 years, 12 years at this point. Our kids were 8 and 10. And I had been really trying to find myself. I had put aside my career to help support him in his career, and we moved a lot. Like I've told you in recent episodes, we started in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories of Canada. We went to Edmonton, then we were in Washington State, then we moved to California, then we were in Brazil, and then we went all the way back to Yellowknife. And in that 9 year period, or a little bit shorter than that, but I completely lost who I was because my focus was on the kids and it was on him and his job.
Mm-hmm.
So when we ended up back in Yellowknife, I had a complete and utter breakdown. And it took a 3 years for me to find myself. And that's the whole part of that moving inside. That's when I started meditating. That's when I started doing yoga. That's when my intuitive abilities really like came on really strong. I was listening to spirit constantly and my spirit guides, which included my grandmother. Um, and I'd finally gotten to that place where I felt whole, like I'd done enough healing that I'd started falling in love with myself. Like I really loved who I was and what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 weeks later, my husband came home and told me he was leaving me. And it devastated me. And it was like I stayed in this relationship and figured out how to do all of this together. And here you feel lost and confused, and you need to leave in order to figure out
Mm-hmm.
this. So that was super, super difficult. And he didn't just leave Canada, he moved to Australia. So we had, a few phone calls here and there. I talk about it in
Wow.
this book. There's a lot of other things that were going on, and everybody's been through heartbreak.
Yeah.
And so, it's nice to feel like, I mean, at the time, I felt a lot of shame about my marriage breaking up. I didn't share the information with a lot of people because I felt like I'd worked so hard on
And
making.
you were a failure. You did something wrong, right?
Absolutely. It's like, how did this happen to me? So we did end up being separated for 18 months, and he did end up finding himself and coming back into rebuild our marriage and our family. But writing about that in the book was super, super difficult. Not so much now, we've been back together 20 years. So, I mean,
Aw.
it's hard to believe it's been that long because sometimes it doesn't feel like that long and then it feels like it's a lifetime. But um, that part was difficult. But there's so many like great parts of the story. This story is,
Yeah.
I'm sarcastic, I'm quirky, I'm funny. It's not meant to be super heavy. People sit
Yeah.
down and they read the book in a weekend. They find bits and pieces that reflect back to their own life so easily. It's a really great book, and I'm actually quite surprised that I wrote it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I talk about when things really started getting kind of strange for me. I was living in Washington State, and my oldest daughter, Brett, would have been um, three, two. She would have been two because I was pregnant. And this one particular day, I was probably 8 months pregnant. She'd come in early in the morning. She was always a very early riser, and she had her little sippy cup and it was
Oh,
full
the
of
sippy
grape
cup.
juice. Yeah, the sippy cup. And she was so proud she had poured her juice and put the lid on, except the lid wasn't on, and it dripped all the way from the kitchen through the dining room down the hall to my bedroom. Grape juice on the carpet, the white carpet. And so, you're just like, oh my God, this is the way my day's starting. And so I had the steam cleaner out, which of course we owned one because of things like this, clean the
Mm.
carpet up. Then she had put a grilled cheese sandwich in the VCR.
Oh, wow. I've never
Oh,
heard of that one. Oh.
I know. I was just like, oh my God. And so she was in a timeout, and I had her sitting on a chair, and she decided she had to go to the bathroom. And because she was
Mm-hmm.
in a timeout, she just decided she was peeing right there. So, anyways, off she went. I had to steam clean the carpet again. And it was just turning into one of those really, really crazy days. So it was the afternoon. I put her into her room for her nap. I was doing
Mm-hmm.
laundry on the kitchen table, pushed the laundry basket back, and knocked over my soda. It was
Uh-huh.
berry soda. And of course, got it all over the carpet. So I ended up on my hands and knees just bawling. Like I'm sure we've all had one of those days where it's just too much and you just
Uh-huh.
don't have a clue what you're going to do except you just need to cry.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was there and I was crying and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." And there was a voice, Jill, in my head that said, "You
Oh.
don't have to." And it was as clear as me talking to you. And I was like, I lifted my head and I was like, what do you mean I don't have to? You don't have to put up with this. You can go crazy and then you'll never have to put up with this again. You can be in an entirely different world.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could see this door just creaking open for me to walk into insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like screamed no, and the door just went slam. And I it was at that point that I knew that I was here to do something a little bit special because I had no idea why that would just show up to try and take me out of living life. And
Mm.
that was like a big kind of wake up call for me that I needed to be here and I needed to be doing exactly what I was doing, moving forward, changing my life, improving things for myself and my family, and eventually for other people.
Interesting. Oh, all right. This is getting heavy today. Tracy Makarenko. I've been there. We've all been there, overwhelmed, feeling crazy, not, and then wow, it's all how you handle it, right? So a lot of people, well, I think can get a lot out of this book. What do most people say after reading it?
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of people over the years just tell me that they feel so connected to not only me but to the story. It's like I'm talking to them, like I'm just sitting there having a
Yeah.
conversation, holding a tea with them. Um, People say it's been wonderful for them to read because they've been struggling in their life on so many different levels, and I touch on so many things a woman goes through. You know, I talk
Mm.
about all of it in this book. And so, people who are struggling or trying to make peace with their past, where those stories or videos are always coming up where they don't feel like they're good enough or they said something wrong or they should have changed this or changed that. I mean, we all go through that, and when you come out the other side of it, that's that sense of peace and freedom. So people get a lot of that from reading my book. You know, I've had people just say that they laughed and then they cried, and they just really feel like the empathy of the journey because I'm also making fun of myself along the way. It's like, yeah, this happened, but seriously, this also happened. So finding the awareness and like just a different viewpoint around different situations really helps open up, I think, the reader's mind to maybe make
Yeah.
light of some of the stuff that's happened in their life. And we all have to do that in order to move on or move past the different things that have happened to us. So, I mean, I love that part about the book.
Okay, well then when did you start writing the second book? And then what are you working on now? It's a big
So,
question.
yeah, so I mean, after I finished writing this book, it took a lot out of me, and I probably didn't do anything for about 2 years. I saw
Okay.
clients, and that was about it. I didn't even end up doing too much promoting of the book just because I didn't realize how much it would knock me off my feet. So, but then there was an opportunity in
Mm.
2016. A colleague of mine wanted to start a series of 5 books called I Am a Brilliant Woman. And she had reached out and asked if I'd be one of the co-authors. There was going to be 10 of us in this book. And um, it was also to raise money for women who were in shelters. And so the book was all about inspirational stories about where women are and not to give up because there's always a bright light at the end of the tunnel. And so I wrote one chapter in that book called Hidden Treasure. And it was all about slowing down because as
Hmm.
women, we don't really know how to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe when someone says, "What are you doing today?" and you say, "Oh, I'm just going to be lazy and sit around." Maybe the sitting around is not lazy. Maybe your body and your mind needs that. And so you are doing something for yourself.
Yep.
And I think we're moving into a society that understands that more now. Um, 8 years ago, it still was a pretty difficult thing, and it is still for some people. They can't sit down. They still hear that voice in their head, their parent telling them, to stay busy, or a grandparent, or a teacher, or whatever. Idle hands make for trouble. I don't remember the saying. But so that was published, that book, I'm a Brilliant Woman, was published in 2016, and it became an Amazon bestseller. And Karen Clanson ended up doing, I think, 3 more books after that. So there's a
Ooh,
series. I'm in volume 1. Um, but when we slow down, we find our purpose. We
yeah,
can't find our purpose if we're rushing around and just being busy. You got to
yeah,
shed some of that stuff in order to clear the way to hear
yeah,
what's important to you. I'm sure you've had that experience, Jill.
yeah, absolutely. It's funny you said that. Yesterday was one of those days. After work, I helped the kids with their homework, and then I just said, I just want to lay in my bed. I want to watch Dateline. I spent 2 hours in my bed. I mean, of course, the kids hounding me, needing this, that, but I'm trying to tell them, I just want to lay here today. And I felt so good about it. And I wasn't being lazy. I just felt my body needed it. Just needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ah,
Good for you. Congratulations.
thank you.
And our mind needs it too. It's kept busy so often. Sometimes our mind needs
Mm-hmm.
that time off, just like our body needs to have time off.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I think it feels great. Felt great.
Oh, it does. It absolutely does. And I mean, you get to the point where it's like, is laying here for the last month good, healthy or unhealthy?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely a tipping point where inactivity then becomes unhealthy, where sometimes inactivity is completely and absolutely healthy, and everyone needs to give themselves permission to come to that place within where you know what you need. Do you need to actually get up and go outside and have a walk because it'll make you feel better? Or will that walk take so much out of you that you're not going to be able to do anything else for the day? And the work I do is all about helping my clients not only heal but get to that place where they can really start listening to their inner self and understand what it is they need as they move into the next minute or the next day or the next year.
Yeah, totally. Well, what happens now? You're doing so much work. You're helping so many with all your services. Are you writing another book?
um, you know what? I know there's a book there. I've been playing a little bit with different ideas. So I know it's coming. Uh, when I wrote Moving from the Outside In, um, I just kept hearing, you're going to write a book. And I'm like laughing because I did terrible in English, high school English,
Mm-hmm.
terrible. So I laughed every time I heard this voice in my head. So I eventually went to a psychic and said, okay, I keep hearing this voice telling me I'm writing a book. And they're like, you absolutely are. I was like, oh, geez, okay. So I went home and just started writing. So by the time it went to an editor and came back with 12 pages of notes, I sat there for 6 months and ended up deleting 150 pages of my book, rearranged it before I sent it off to an editor again. So there's a process. There's a process. That chapter I wrote took me no time at all. I sat down and I finished it in a day. My book, I probably wrote it in a weekend, but it took me 3 years to edit it. So, there's definitely something brewing, but again, it's kind of like that paying attention to yourself and knowing when you're ready and not forcing that. But there'll be another book for sure. Maybe 2, I'm thinking.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we are almost out of time and our last 2 minutes together. How did you want to kind of sum things up for today?
Well, I hope whoever's listening does go out and buy my book, Moving from the Outside In. It's on Amazon. Um, you can also find me on my you can find out more about me on my website at tracymakarenko.com, TracyMakarenko. You can reach out, contact me through Facebook or Instagram. Um, yeah, I've been doing this work for like 20 plus years, and there's just so much I love sharing with people. And you can connect with me virtually for healing. If you're on Vancouver Island or nearby, you're welcome to book in for an in-person treatment. I have workshops going on all the time. Like you said earlier, I teach Usui and Karuna Reiki, so there's workshops on that, as well as my monthly new moon meetings that I run, which are also virtual and in person. And there's always something else coming up. So just love sharing as much of this work as I can with whoever is out there and needs me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time here as always, Tracy. And reach out, Tracy Makarenko, Google her, find her books on Amazon. And thank you for being here today, opening up, sharing, a little bit of your past, your hurt, your journey. And it's something we all have. And, and the truth is we can all heal, right? And then that's what you're helping so many people with.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. And to everyone, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Enjoy your weekend.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.